The application is submitted, all supplemental and extra documents are turned in, and all fees are paid, and you receive notification that you were invited for an interview.
Yay!
It may feel like a sign of relief for some, or it may just intensify your anxiety. But in this week's episode, I will be covering tips to take with you as you prepare for your interview. But before we get started with the episode, make sure to check out crackpcat.com for all of your PCAT study needs. They have comprehensive videos, an arsenal of computerized practice exams with detailed score reports. The link for the website is always in the show notes, so happy studying. Before we get into the different types of interview styles and how to prepare for them, I want to touch on a few things that you may experience while you're waiting on your glorified invitation for an interview. As mentioned in my last episode, your application is not officially sent to the school until PharmCast verifies it. So once you've submitted everything, make sure to continue to check your email for any notifications. Also, look out for notifications from the schools that you've applied to because they may send something like they've received your application or please make an account on our website or something like that. So just make sure to continue to check your email, but don't go overboard. Just breathe. I know when I kept seeing emails from PharmCast or the schools that I applied to, it kind of raised my blood pressure, but just breathe. Everything will be okay. But just overall, make sure that you're putting an email on your application that you check regularly and that, you'll be able to get to if needed. So just like I said, make sure don't check your email every 5 minutes, but make sure you keep an eye on it. Because I know one thing I did once I submitted everything, I turned off my email notifications completely. On my phone, they're usually just on vibrate, but I do get some regular emails daily. And I just didn't want every time I heard the little buzz or felt the buzz that I thought it was a school or something like that. So I just turned all the notifications off completely. And when I organically just picked up my phone for any reason, then I would see the notification then. So whatever it takes for you to kind of calm your nerves, just make sure, you're going about this. I know it's an exciting time, but, just make sure you go about it the way that best fits you. And also, I know after I did my submitted everything, this was the worst for my anxiety. So I used things like my weighted blanket. I made sure to keep myself active. I journaled and I listened to podcasts and things like that. And I also used my diffuser. And I can talk about how those things helped me in a later episode, but I know just using those things together or separately, they really helped me with my anxiety. So let's get down to the goods. So once you submitted your application and all your documents have been submitted and everything and verified, I made a document in one of my favorite note-taking apps on my computer and my phone of all the schools that I applied to. Now, as interviews and notifications rolled in, I just edited the document saying, okay, this school wants to wait until they see my grade, my final grades. This school wants a higher PCAT, or this is the date that the school asked me for an interview and things like that. So I just kept a running list of the schools I applied to and the things, the next steps for them. And then once I wound down to all the schools that were sending me, inviting me for interviews right now, because I did have a few schools that wanted higher PCAT scores or they just wanted to wait to see my grades. But I figured grades don't come out till May, and I'm getting interviews right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of just mark this off the list for right now because I'm sure that I'll get accepted to these schools that I'm getting interviews for right now instead of waiting until May, because I really need to know if I'm going to school or not right now and not the summer before. So I made a second list. I made a second document listing the schools that I got interviews for. And I just started researching the school, like hardcore researching. I went through like just questions that you normally hear in an interview, like, why do you want to go to our school? Why do you want to be a pharmacist? Tell me about yourself. Tell me about a time when, things like that, because I didn't know what to expect. So in each, I made a document for each school and I just highlight, things about their program, specific things on why I wanted to go to this school, and just made, comments on questions that they could ask. Now, I do want to say for my first interview, see, different schools do different things. So, for example, for my first interview, I wasn't given much details on if the interview was open or closed file. And what I mean by open and closed file is sometimes the school will tell you if the interviewer has looked at your application before and knows any details about you beforehand, or if they just don't know anything about you at all. So, like I said, I answered those common questions and I took note of those things. And I do want to add, you are on as soon as you step foot on that campus. And what I mean by on is you don't know who is observing you. So just make sure that you smile, stay off your phone, dress comfortably but professionally, and just make sure that you are on as soon as you step foot on that campus until you drive off. So, another little tidbit. So again, for my first interview, just talking off the experiences that I've had, I expected the interview to be the entire day because that's just, things that I've heard. But for my first interview, it was only a half day. So, and like I said, I wasn't given much information except for where I should be and what time I should be. So I just took all of this into consideration and as lessons learned for my next interviews. So I do want to note that I had 3 different interviews, and one was local, which was in the city that I live in, and 2 were in 2 different states. So my second one and my third one, they were in 2 different states. So once I received notifications about those interviews, I made my travel arrangements and I cleared my schedule. I told my job I needed to be flexible for certain weekends because some schools post the interview days that they have. And so that just goes back to doing your research. Like when I say do your research, do all of your research. And that's why it was a little bit hard for me to ask questions once I got to the interview because I felt like I don't know what more you can tell me except for, like personal experiences, but I still ask questions. Even the website might not be updated, and I definitely ask about student experiences and things like that. So just make sure you ask questions. Let me get back to my notes because sometimes I get a little bit off track, but I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys all of the details. So back to the traveling interviews. Some schools will give you a specific date that you have to be there, and some will give you a choice of which dates that you have to be there. And of course, I'm sure if you can't make it on that one day, then they will accommodate you. But I'm just saying, make sure that you go as soon as you can. Don't wait, say this is March, and then you have an interview date for May or something, hypothetically. You want to go as soon as you can because the sooner you go for your interview, the sooner they can look over your complete application and make their decision. And if you're anything like me, like I needed to know where I'm going to go next year because I needed to know what I was going to do with the rest of my life. Let's see. And then for traveling, I do want to note that I did a carry-on. And I did a carry-on luggage. I'm not sure. I'm not one to travel with carry-on luggage because I overpack. Who else is team overpack? But I made sure I fit everything into a carry-on luggage. And I learned that from looking at medical students during their interview process on like YouTube videos. Just like I said in a previous episode before, anything that was out of my control, I wanted to limit things like that. So I didn't want my luggage to get lost. So I made sure I packed everything in a carry-on. Because let's say you get there the day before. your interview and it's late and your interview is at 8 o'clock the next morning. If they lose your luggage, how are you going to be able to get a suit? I'm sure you're not going to be able to go to the interview in the outfit that you traveled in. So just tip do a carry on. So nothing like that will happen. And make sure to schedule that you will be there ahead of time. Even if your interview is local, I did a test run to see like how early I would need to leave, and just to make sure what building I needed to go to. I knew exactly what building I needed to go to. So for the local one, I just drove to make sure what building I need to go to because I knew exactly how long it'd take me. And just don't trust Google or your Maps application or anything like that because anything could happen. So just make sure to do a test drive to the location and make sure you know where to park and what building to go to because they might have you parking across campus and the building that you need to go to is, let's say, a few feet away, and you get there exactly on time and now you have to walk across campus. Just make sure to have everything in order as much as you can and be prepared. So that's some tips for that. Now, I just want to kind of move on again to my second interview because my second interview was multi-mini interview style. And what I mean by that is they give you different scenarios. So let's say this could be in a big room or they have you go in different offices, but they will give you a scenario. You have a few minutes to read it. It can be whatever they choose. And then they tell you when to go into the room or switch tables and things like that. And you will have to give your answer to the person in front of you. And then you move around to different stations like that. Now, this can be questions, different activities. I know one of my interviews, they had us doing kind of like a blindfold, see if you follow directions, how do you work with other people activity. And then the other ones, they were kind of just questions and scenarios and things like that. So definitely, I'm not sure. This school told me that it was going to be a multi-mini style, so I just researched different things. You really can't be prepared for it like any other interview, but just make sure that you are confident and just be yourself. I know that's cliche and people say that all the time, but being yourself and bringing your A game so you are ready for anything that they ask of you. That's why I did those notes because it's hard for me to talk about myself, but I needed them to know if they have read my application or not, that I am the person that I say I am. And I definitely can, show you more in person than I can do on paper personally. Because you've gotten this far, they've read your application. Now it's time for you to shine and show them that you are the right person for their program. You are the right person for this profession. And hey, pick me, you know? Also, I want to make sure that you are interacting with other candidates. I know everybody is nervous, but like I said, people are watching you. You don't know who's watching you. You don't know who's grading you. like making a decision on your application or not. So just be friendly to the other candidates, interact with them. I know one of my schools, they had a mixer the night before the actual interview. It wasn't mandatory, but since I was in the area, I just wanted to see where the school was anyway. So I attended and talked to current students and professors. And so finally, for my last interview, it was out of state. So I had to travel again. And this was a different type of, it wasn't a different type of interview, but it was kind of a different type of experience for me personally. My last interview was for a hybrid program, which is online and some on campus. And so I had tons of questions for this program. Not saying that I didn't have questions for the other programs, but because I've already been in a online program, my master's was completely online, and I know that this is a different level, like a professional program, but I just needed to know if the students online had the same opportunities as the students on campus. Because for my master's program, it basically was like two different programs. We didn't know the students on campus. They had different opportunities. They were able to join clubs and associations and go to events and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure that the students that were in the hybrid program had the same opportunities. They were able to do research, within the means of being hybrid, were able to be in clubs and associations. I just wanted to make sure that even if I picked this option of doing hybrid because it was easier for me in my situation, I didn't want to have that, I guess you can say, downplay any of my experiences as being into a professional school. Like if I couldn't be in any of the clubs or associations or be a part of research, I definitely probably would have not considered the school because I didn't want that to take away just because I wanted to have a little flexibility about my location. So I think that kind of wraps up all of the notes that I had regarding any interview tips. If you have any additional questions, please make sure to leave me a comment or DM. I do talk a lot about I actually made a video on my YouTube channel, so I'll leave all my social information below. And also, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and leave us a comment. And if you want to be a guest on the show, make sure to connect with me via, my social media, or you can email me at podcast@crackpcat.org. So I'll talk to you guys next time.